Senator Chris Coons, a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, of course, was at the meeting and joins me now. Senator, thank you very much. One of your colleagues, Senator Duckworth, said that she thought the briefing was a dog and pony show. Senator Corker said he didn't learn anything he didn't already know. He's the chairman of your committee. What say you?
Well, Andrea, I thought it was a very clear-eyed assessment of the threat that North Korea poses to the United States and our vital regional allies, South Korea and Japan. And I do think it's important for all 100 senators to be in one time at one place and to receive a thorough briefing on the strategy as it is evolving from the Trump administration. So, frankly, I'll choose to be more positive about it and say that I think it serves our national interest for us to try and find a bipartisan path forward in what is a very difficult and threatening situation.
Can you figure out why this briefing couldn't have been done on Capitol Hill, where you have a SCIF, a secure room, rather than in a jerry-rigged auditorium in the executive office building at the White House, which had to be retrofitted for classified information?
Of course, the briefing could have been done just as easily here on Capitol Hill. In fact, most of the classified briefings I've ever participated in were done here. The last administration would use the Situation Room at the White House for very small group classified briefings, and this was a somewhat awkward setting for all 100 senators. We did get to hear in detail from the Director of National Intelligence, from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, from the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State. The one add-on to our being at the White House was President Trump came and spoke briefly to us, and the National Security Advisor came and spoke briefly to us. But Andrea, I choose to focus on what I think is our common challenge, which is getting China to take its responsibility for having supported and facilitated Kim Jong-un and his reckless regime in North Korea, which now poses a threat to our regional allies, to the hundreds of thousands of Americans in South Korea, to the tens of thousands of American servicemen and women in Japan and South Korea, and potentially to the American homeland. So I think we should take this seriously and focus on trying to work together to come up with a successful strategy.
Is it your takeaway right now that they're focusing on more sanctions as Secretary Tillerson goes to the UN tomorrow in New York? More economic pressure on both China and North Korea, or China to cut off the supply line, rather than preemptive military action prior to North Korea doing anything more provocative?
That's right, Andrea. It's clear that we are forward deploying important assets, the nuclear submarine USS Michigan, the aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson, and the carrier group, and the THAAD missile defense system, all to South Korea and the waters off of South Korea, as a way of reassuring and being prepared to defend our allies in Japan and South Korea. And we are going to initially pursue a diplomatic strategy. I do think that the Trump administration now needs to reconcile an irresponsible budget proposal to slash by a third funding for diplomacy and development with an announced strategy of prioritizing diplomacy. This is exactly the moment, Andrea, when we need the Foreign Service, when we need our ambassadors around the world engaging with our allies and potential partners in order to make this a priority focus for countries around the world. Secretary Hillary Clinton did an outstanding job of marshaling world resources to confront Iran's nuclear weapons program. It sounds to me as if the Trump administration is planning to follow almost exactly the same path of increased sanctions, increased UN action, and global action to make North Korea a pariah and to engage China in response. That means we need more rather than less diplomatic resources.
On that front, in terms of the focus on diplomacy and the budget cuts that have been proposed, there is reporting in the New York Times right now that the new Secretary of State is not planning to nominate key positions. Right now, he's got a nomination for a deputy secretary, but no one else has even been nominated to be underneath him. Just holdovers, and that the corridors at the State Department are empty.
That's right.
And that he's not planning to fill those slots till 2018. Is that too long to wait to fill these positions?
Absolutely, Andrea. We've got emerging or pressing problems in many places in the world. North Korea, South China Sea, Syria, Russia's continuing aggression in Ukraine. We've got plenty of challenges, as well as ones that we've faced for years now, like Iran's nuclear threat So frankly, it's important that we have a full complement of diplomats representing us around the world and supporting Secretary Tillerson in his important and difficult work. I did meet earlier today with President Trump's nominee to be our next ambassador to China, the former governor of Iowa. He's going to play a critical role. Governor Branstad of Iowa is going to play a critical role should he be confirmed as our next ambassador. But Secretary Tillerson and the Trump administration needs to do their job and to fill these critical vacancies in the Defense Department, State Department, and other agencies. Democrats aren't blocking these nominations. The Trump White House and the Secretary of State simply aren't moving them forward.
Very, very briefly, a quick comment on Mike Flynn. We now know being investigated by the Pentagon as Inspector General.
The more we learn about General Flynn and his role as National Security Advisor in the Trump White House, the more shocked I am. I can't believe the Trump administration let him get anywhere near the Situation Room. My concern now, Andrea, is whether the Trump administration knew about his conflicts of interest, his very real conflicts of interest, and simply failed to investigate them or address them, or whether they just didn't care.
Senator Coons, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.